All right, like, click, and subscribe, do all that. We get to our first game since Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts ended up beating the Bengals 31-27. Phillip Rivers, 29-44, 371 yards, 3 TDs, 1 pick. John Taylor, 60 yards. Marcus Johnson, 108 yards. Joe Burrow, 25-39, 313 yards, 1 pick. Joe Mixon had about 54 yards in the TD. T. Higgins had 125 yards. Giovanni Bernard has scored a TD in the first quarter. Trey Burton scored 2 TDs in the second quarter. Jack Doyle hit himself off of the TD in the fourth. And the Bengals at this point were up by like 21. There you go, see? The Bengals are up by 21, but this is when the Colts started making their comeback. As you can see, it was 24-21 in the third quarter. A 48-yard kick, and it bounced off a possible game winner, and Randy Bullock did it again. And up next, we had the Atlanta Falcons taking on the Minnesota Vikings. As you can see, the Falcons got the lead. Will they blow it? Well, in this one, they don't blow it. They got themselves a new head coach by the Ray Morris. And guess what? The Falcons actually beat the Vikings 40-23. Matt Ryan, 30 for 40, 371 yards, 4 TDs. Todd Gurley, 47 yards. Julio Jones, 137 yards and 2 TDs. Kirk Cousins went 24 for 36, 343 yards, 3 TDs, but he also threw 3 picks in this game. What the heck? Alex Madison, 26 yards. Justin Jefferson, going off as usual, 166 yards and 2 TDs. Calvin Ridley got me a TD in the second quarter. Adam Thielen and Jalen Hurts had scored TDs in the fourth. Atlanta, as I just said, took the lead early and actually didn't blow it. And that basically will give them their first win of the season. New head coach makes difference, huh? Right, Raheem Morris? They did a good job, finally. And this one was a game we were supposed to have last week, but now we're finally getting this week. The Denver Broncos taking on the New England Patriots. And you see this? He set up for a field goal, because that's all this was. This was a field goal fest today. Anyway, you know what I'm saying? The Broncos ended up beating the Patriots 18-12. So let's get to the stats. Drew Lock, 10 for 24, 189 yards, 2 picks. Philip Lindsay had about 101 yards. Welcome back, Philip Lindsay. Tim Patrick had about 101 yards. Cam Newton, 17 for 25, 233 total yards, 1 rushing TD, but he also had 2 picks. James White had 65 yards. Bottom line is, if you had Brandon McManus on your fantasy leagues, you was on fire with about 6 field goals that he made in this game, and that sealed the deal for Denver's victory. And then we got some NFC East goofiness as DC squad takes on the New York Giants. And New York ends up beating DC 20-19. Let's check the stats. Daniel Jones, 12 for 19, 186 total yards, 1 TD, 1 pick. Darius Slayton had 41 yards in the TD. Kyle Allen, 31 of 42, 260 yards, 2 TDs, and 1 pick. J.D. McKenzie, 41 yards. Logan Thomas had about 42 yards in the TD. Kyle Allen. Man, Kyle Allen. Boy, oh boy. Yeah, at this point, it was 3 minutes and 41 seconds left. And then Kyle Allen, right here, fumbles the ball. And then the Giants scoop it up for Tim Crowder. And he runs in for 43 yards and a TD. But then Kyle comes back with like 43 seconds left. And he hits a long bomb to Cam Sims. So it's like, oh snaps, they got it. But guess what they do after this? They actually try to go for a 2. Now, do they get the 2? Do you think they get it? Look at it. No, they ain't getting the damn 2. Look at this ridiculousness. And that's how Washington loses. And the Giants get their first win. Chase Young looks disgusted. Ron Rivera, like we said, NFC East goofiness. And that's how you get the Giants their first win. And up next, you have the greatness that is the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. We ended up beating Philly 30-28, the Ravens did. Lamar Jackson, 16-27, 294 total yards, 2 TDs. Nick Bull, 33 yards of the TD. Carson Wentz, 21 of 40, 213 yards, 2 TDs. Miles Sanders, 118 yards. Travis Fulgham, 75 yards of the TD. Gus Edwards has scored a TD in the first quarter. Baltimore had a 24-6 lead in the third, but Carson Wentz did fight back and scored with 2 minutes left in the game. But a failed 2-point conversion saved the Ravens, even though the Purple Squad committed for 12 penalties for 132 yards. Bottom line is, Ravens got to clean that up. And this is where they ended up scoring, 28-30. And they would actually had to go for 2. And then the 2-point conversion right there got stuffed. No good, and that would do it. And in this one, we had a heck of a battle right here. The Houston Texans taking on the Tennessee Titans. The Titans ended up beating the Texans in overtime. It was crazy, 42-36. Ryan Tannehill, he was 30 for 41, 364 yards, 4 TDs and a pick. Derek Henry went for 212 yards and 2 TDs. Antonio Frisker, 113 yards in the TD. Deshaun Watson, 28 for 37, 335 yards, 4 TDs. David Johnson had about 57 yards in the TD. Will Fuller back in the game, 123 yards in the TD. Basically, over 1,000 yards of offense from both teams today. And that's how that went down. Derrick Henry all the way back here went absolutely ridiculous with the mayhem and the running. It just came through, caused an abuse. Look at that. I think that was a 94-yard TD. Yeah, it was. Houston makes the pass to Brandon Cooks. Now, at this point, you thought the game was over, right? They had a good enough lead. It was under 2 minutes. No, but as hard as they fought, Houston fought. Tennessee Titans got back down. There's 7 seconds left on the clock. And A.J. Brown scores a touchdown to tie to go to overtime. Look at that mean face. And there you go, overtime. Derrick Henry doing Derrick Henry things. Look at this. Causing mayhem once again. And you got the hot hand. Why not? Just finish it off with Derrick Henry. Done deal in the story. And the Tennessee Titans stay undefeated. And up next, you had the Chicago Bears taking on the Carolina Panthers. Defense at its finest. The Bears beat the Panthers 23-16. Nick Foles, 23-39, 198 yards, 1 TD, 1 pick. David Montgomery, 58 yards. And Cole Met had 20 yards at a TD. Teddy Bridgewater, 16-29, 216 yards, 2 picks. Mike Davis had 52 yards at a TD. DJ Moore had about 93 yards. Basically, Teddy was sacked 4 times, had 3 turnovers, 3 for 13 on third downs. Teddy Bridgewater was basically abused by Chicago's defense in this game, and then Chicago ends up moving up to 5-1. And up next, you got the Detroit Lions taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, which team is going to get their second win of the season? The Lions do. They beat the Jaguars 34-16. Matt Stafford, 19-31, 223 yards, 1 TD, 1 pick. Dwayne Swift, 116 yards and 2 TDs. Kenny Golladay, 105 yards. Gardner Minshew, 25-44, 257 total yards, 1 TD, 1 rushing TD, and 1 pick. Keenan Cole had 143 yards. And Adrian Peterson had himself a TD early in the first quarter. This one was basically over before it even got started. And I thought to myself, maybe Jacksonville really is tanking. I don't know what the deal is, but they ain't been the same since week 2 when they played against the Dolphins. I think that's still stuck in Gardner Minshew's head, and then they go to 1-5. The Lions go to 2-3. And then the main event, or what's supposed to be the main event, the Cleveland Browns taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. This was supposed to be a close matchup, but it wasn't because of stuff like this, obviously. Minka Fitzpatrick over there pick him up. But bottom line is, the Steelers laid the smackdown on those Browns, 38-7. Let's get the stats. Big Ben, 14-22, 262 yards, 1 TD. James Carter, 101 yards, 1 TD. James Washington, 68 yards in the TD. Baker Mayfield, 10 of 18, 119 yards, 1 TD, and 2 picks. Kareem Hunt, 40 yards, Rashad Higgins, 13 yards in a TD. And as I showed you before, Baker Mayfield, he threw a pick to Micah Fitzpatrick. Man, this was flat out ridiculous performance from him. Baker Mayfield was such garbage today. Look at this. After he got sacked about 4 times, you know what I mean? He was 0 for 3 on 4th downs, but the bigger stat was 1 for 12 on 3rd downs. It's ridiculous. Baker ended up getting benched and stood the start of the 4th quarter. You guess who replaced him? Guess who freaking replaced him? Freaking Case Keenum, of all people, replaced Baker Mayfield. It's just ridiculous. Oh, by the way, Chase Claypool was balling in this game. You know, he's a baller. He was doing his thing. He got himself a TD right there in the 3rd quarter. And there you go. Benny Snell's just sliding in there, done dealing them. I mean, like, Browns played like absolute trash this game. Like, Myles Garrett wasn't even a factor in this one, honestly. Oh, y'all thought I was joking? You thought I was playing around? Look at that. That's really Case Keenum out there. Like, I didn't even know he was with the Browns. It's ridiculous.